didn't
Yeah, like right on.
you were about to give up. It's like
I was about to X out his Wikipedia page.
It's like those things they tell you in college, like, if it's a grad student teaching you, you can be 10 minutes late.
Thank
Full
you.
professor, you have to wait 15 minutes before you can leave.
Take out, just run out the door. That's I went to culinary school, so we weren't allowed to do that no matter what. I said I went to culinary school. We weren't allowed. We couldn't ever leave.
Oh, no. No one really could. That was a fake rule. That was just something the college kids come up with.
Yeah. All right, we are going to get right into this and just have a good time with it. I'm hoping you have some fun stories and everything else.
I got nothing. I'm sorry.
This is our guest of honor, Jeff Parker.
At 5 o'clock, that was a sweet time to put this panel. But
Yeah,
thanks.
why not? Look, I've had a long day, so I'm sure you have as well.
Yeah.
All right. He has done so many wonderful things for so many different comic companies between DC, Marvel.
And I did the Interman
Yeah.
and Underground. Okay.
There we go.
That was what I thought to grab off the table before I ran.
Actually, when I found out I was monitoring this, I started just paging through all my books just to see what I can get signed.
Mm-hmm.
And then I realized I got
You
lazy.
didn't have anything by me, did you?
No, I do. I got
Yeah.
tons, actually.
Man.
Yeah, and not only just Marvel and DC. I mean, obviously, and you're still working on just about everything, every company, correct?
Yeah, I am, and like at DC, mainly at DC right now. Though in Marvel, there will be a Hulk annual out in probably another month or something like that, with Mahmoud Asrar drawing it. But then it's all DC for me because it'll be Batman 66 still, and I'm the new writer on Aquaman. So
Oh, awesome! Congratulations
Aquaman's
on that.
Aquatic Adventures.
Is he going to be a big tough Aquaman or?
Oh yeah, he's
Yeah.
like punching sharks in the face and cool
Perfect.
stuff like that.
Love it, love it. Like maybe like a Justice League Unlimited kind of Aquaman.
Oh man, well, like he just eats a whale or
Yeah,
something.
Yeah, just that kind of guy. But you've worked with so many other companies. I mean, including obviously one of our favorites here, Dark Horse, and
Yes.
Vertigo and everybody
recently
else.
worked Willow at Dark Horse. I'm working with Dynamite right now on the King's Watch series, which is Flash Gordon, Phantom, and Mandrake. And I'll probably do more Dark Horse stuff. They published Bucko, Erica Mullen, and mine's comic.
Now you're local, if I'm not mistaken.
I am.
Yeah. Did you grow up here? Did you go to school here?
I am from North Carolina, and at some point I was, like all people in entertainment, was in L.A. and working in places down there. I was working on cartoons, like the Big Guy and Rusty the Boy Robot. I was storyboarding, and for Fox Kids, and then I did more storyboards and started working on the Interman book that I held up while I was there. And I would come up and visit because it was a cheap flight at the time to just come up to Portland from L.A. Like it would be like $100 or something. And I was like, "Oh, this place is great." And then I finally just made the move and dragged everybody up here.
What made you get out of cartoons and just work your way over to comics?
Oh, I wanted to. It was just that if you remember, the comics industry really went in the toilet for a while in the late '90s, and
There's a guy
remember
selling
that?
box speculator boom, maybe.
yeah, and so I to have work, I went and worked in animation, but I really just wanted to do comics. So, once I started after Interman came out, I started getting more offers to write, and then the next thing I knew, I was just writing all the time, and Portland's a great place to write.
It is. There are tons of great writers throughout the entire city, and outlining boroughs and everything else. And tons of people I've heard of that come from here, but not as many as prominent as yourself. Not as many that have as much work as yourself, or such a deep catalog of work.
That's just because I love money. I don't know if I like. I mean, like
I like
you
an
just
honest
probably
guy.
like it, but like I really like it.
Yeah, no, I'm pretty greedy myself.
Yeah, and I spend it so fast that I still have nothing to show for it. But yeah, well, I'm part of Periscope Studio, which had a panel earlier. I don't know if anybody went to that. And so I'm surrounded by a bunch of great artists down there, like Jonathan Case, who works with me often on the Batman 66 comic, and who did the cover of the calendar for the show and all that stuff. He was an excellent painter. Steve Lieber, who worked, and that's who I would come up and visit Steve when I would come visit in the area. Sometimes I'd help him with a comic book and do backgrounds or something, or just hang out because it was $100 flight and I could come up. And you know, Steve, you know, Carl Kiesel, Ron Randall, David Hahn, Erica Moen, Colin Coover. I mean, we've got a giant studio now, and like we have interns and everything. It's pretty great.
Little interns, so slave labor is what you have.
Yes.
Yeah.
We don't pay them.
No, of course
But
not.
we do. We
Inexperience.
We did finally. Yeah, we actually do. Finally, like we started a couple of years ago, doing workshops for them. So making sure that they were getting skill, you know, just craft talks and stuff like that. So I always take this writer one, and I usually do it like towards the end of their internship, and then I kind of sit there and I just gripe about whatever is bothering me about comics that week or something, and then I kind of work into like, here's how you can think about writing and how you can approach trying to make a living doing this and setting up your art and things like that.
So we're going to get the standard panel questions just out of the way. Did you go to school for writing? What made you want to get into writing?
I went to school initially. I went to college for art, and then found out, like a lot of people who do that the school I went to just only focused on poo-poo gallery stuff, where you would just talk about what you made, and it was never very good, and the craft's low and all that sort of thing.
What school?
It was East Carolina University,
Okay.
Which is actually like the second biggest school in North Carolina. And then Pirates. And I switched, and I went over to English, which, of course, I ended up using because I was a literature major, and that was a huge help. You know, I read all the great stuff and had some really impressive professors there. And but the other thing that kind of kept going through it, while I was at school, I worked on the school newspaper, and I did a comic strip for it. So every week I still had to turn in my little comic strip, and it really helped me with just deadlines, which is the one thing. There are a lot of talented people out there, but they never get the hang of deadlines and how you really have to turn something in every month or every week, to get things out.
Well, it's got to be quality as well, and that's where you
But
obviously have accelerated.
Done is like a huge component of it.
Yeah. So what drove you towards comics? I mean, what really pushed it? I told you the cliche questions are getting right now. We're doing them right now.
Yeah, it's staples. I like staples, and I like folds. And when I was a kid, it's like everybody else in comics. They usually start fairly young. I may grill all of you like why you read comics too, but my dad had a grocery store as a kid, and I just sat by the spinner rack, sitting on the Coke machine, just reading comics all day. And yeah, I would have a pretty impressive collection if I'd kept them, but I always had to put them back so he could sell them.
Bent covers and all.
Yeah, I would often get like coverless ones because that was how he would rip the covers and send them back in. That's what you did when you back then in the 70s or whatever, and to get reimbursed for the ones you didn't sell. And do they still do that at Barnes & Noble? Yeah, they probably just go shredded. Well, a lot of those would end up like probably in those little Whitman sampler bags where they would have 3 comics in a plastic bag like it's candy. But anyway, so I always was really into comics. But then what really I think when I got to college, I was still sort of like I was half a communications major and other stuff. But I think what really totally locked me down was I went to a comic show like this one, and the artist Al Williamson came down to it, and he was the big Star Wars and Flash Gordon artist for years. And I took my pages it was all stuff of my own that I had been drawing, and I drew some little alien from one of his old EC stories. And I was just showing him, and he invited me to come around the table and sit down with him. And I was like, oh my God, I wasn't expecting anything like that. He said, well, he just didn't have time to talk to me, but he said, just come back and sit down, and I'll get to you whenever I'm like. But he almost never did get to me because he just constantly had something to sign. I think he was inking John Romita Jr. on something at Marvel at the time. This would be like the late 80s, 1990. And, you know, and I was just back there just like, I can't believe it. And just hanging out with him was so cool to me. You know, that was one of those things that cemented, like, if I was wishy-washy about it, then I got very solid on it. And when I went back, I was immediately writing and drawing and just doing a ton of stuff. You know, I was like, I'm going to be like that. That guy is the coolest guy in the world, you know.
What was it, or when was it that you actually hit that point? What was like that mark, that golden point where you were like, oh my God, I am that guy?
About 2 hours ago, over there, and
Somebody like
over
stopped
at
you for an autograph.
table 911. I'm actually at table 911, by the way. It's like, thanks. It's easy to remember though when you tell everybody.
Just stick with 911.
That September special from the Onion. Yeah, it's weird because in comics you never really. I don't know. I have to ask somebody who's worked in it longer, but you never really get settled and feel like, yep, I'm okay. I always feel like in one more day, everybody's going, well, we're tired of your nonsense, Parker, and just and
On to the next
and then I'm not, you know, in demand anymore. And right now I feel pretty good because like I'm working on a book people like. You know, it's like everybody loves that Batman '66 book. You know, and it's great. I can, you know, longtime fans, kids who don't even know what it is but just like the look of it. You know, so it's awesome to have something like that, which doesn't happen in superhero comics nearly enough anymore. But yeah, I don't know that I feel like Al Williamson over there. And I certainly didn't invite anybody to sit back around the table with me, so I must not be there.
Must not be there.
I do, and I even have a chair next to me too.
When you're, you know, when you got Batman '66 and you're working on it and everything, is that just like an incredibly cool feeling just to say, I'm working on Batman? Like that's what's happening right now.
Well, that's one of the rare ones where you get to do something that meant a lot to you as a kid. And I'm actually not that big into pure nostalgia or just trying to, every once in a while I do like to feed the young me somewhere still inside. But that one's like, you know, I remember what a big deal that show was to me. And I remember going and meeting Adam West as a kid at a car show, which is the way you met Adam West a lot back then. And, you know, the Batmobile was there, and I went and got my picture taken with him. And actually, that ultimately, I think, led to me getting that job, because when I was talking to Ben Abernathy, who was at DC West Coast at the time, I sent him the picture, like a picture from my computer. You know, I just did the little thing of using my webcam, because behind me was the autographed Adam West From One Crime Fighter to Another thing with him and Batman on it that I got at that car show. And, you know, and they thought, that's great. And I didn't know that, like, right about that time was when they were realizing that the licenses were coming together for Fox Greenway and Warner Brothers and everything to be able to do comics of the show. So it's just like I inadvertently bumbled into, hey, look, I like that show you're about to cast. But I remember as a kid going and meeting him and everything, and like we're in a long line with all these other kids, and they hand you the glossy, and some woman asks what your name is. I said, Jeff. I'm 8. And, you know, so she writes that down. And then it gets pushed in the list, like going down, so she's handing it out as the kids come up. And when you get there, you forgot that you ever told somebody your name or how old you were. And then, you know, and then there's Batman. He goes, hello, Jeff. And I'm like, he knows my name. I just freaked me out, and I was like, well, of course he knows my name. He's Batman. You know, it was like, that was such a great day. You know, he shakes my hand with that glove on and everything. It was awesome.
That's very cool.
Yeah, that guy was really good. He was really good with kids. You know, it's like he wasn't the crabby kind of what you would expect.
Yeah.
He was actually always very gracious.
Well, that's very cool. Then you know, get off Batman a little bit, and DC for that matter. Just to jump over to Marvel, you know, Hulk. You said it yourself. Avengers, or Dark Avengers.
And Thunderbolts.
Thunderbolts. X-Men First Class.
Yeah.
Yeah. How'd you like doing that?
X-Men First Class was kind of a pain in the butt. Even though I'm very proud of all that work,
Thanks for being honest.
Yeah, it was because I had to, even though later they said it wasn't in continuity, I went, you sure sold it like it was in continuity because you told everybody that in the interviews. And then I was expected to line up with the continuity, so I couldn't like have them meet somebody that later they would meet for the first time. And I'm like, man, I'm not going to read 40 years of X-Men. Like I read, the chunk in the 80s and stuff, but it's like, so I would have to sneak around on Wikipedia or ask a fan like, did they ever talk to Doctor Strange more than this other time or something like that. So it was really a pain trying to figure out how to keep the little dancing between the raindrops of continuity. And it would always force me to I'm just going to have a story where they're barely with anybody else but themselves. They're their own cast. And it turned out really good, and I got to bring in people that I really liked, like Colleen Coover, to work on it, and that kind of stuff was great. And I got to work with Kevin Nolan, like people like I admired for decades. And of course, that was the book that I think a lot of people got to know me from because it had X-Men on it, and it's like, oh, good, it's those X-Men who run around in the yellow and black suits.
Yeah, you did a little bit of Spider-Man. 1602.
Yeah, I did the 1602 thing, and I've had Spider-Man in everything I've written at some point because he's Spider-Man. And
of course.
Kind of, yeah, it's like Wolverine. He's going to show up in your book.
It's inevitable.
If you're writing a Marvel book. But the first job I got at Marvel that led to everything was Spider-Man. It was the Marvel Adventures Spider-Man. And did you like that? It was a fill-in. The editor, Mark Panicia, had just started there, and he and I had worked on stuff before. And it was one of those nice things where he remembered me after I'd worked on these other things that didn't pay well at all, and said, hey, well, he had just read a story that I'd given him. I'd given him a comic, and when he unpacked his stuff, he found it, and it was called Ape Company. And it was my kind of little homage to Joe Kubert, where this bunch of gorillas and chimps all form a combat outfit in World War II. So to me, it was just Tarzan mashed up with Sergeant Rock. And Mark liked the fact, I didn't realize that they were launching that line, and the big thing about it was that they had to be done in ones all the time. It was just going to be 22 pages, and that's it. There was no continuity between the books, so that if anyone, because they were trying to reach out to kids, and if any kid got it, they didn't want them to have to have seen any other comic. So he had read this 10-pager I did and thought, well, if he can do a complete story in 10 pages, this 22 will be nothing, And so the first thing I did was a Spider-Man Human Torch team up. And I didn't really think it would lead to anything. I was just trying to amuse myself, which is perfect. Because usually what you do in one of those situations when you think I'm being given a chance is you try to second guess what the editors want. And that's a big mistake. Instead, I just what would be funny? What if I bring that Kirby monster Goom back, but instead he kind of talks like a rapper? And that was my whole, that was essentially, it justifies it in the story if you read it. And apparently, then I heard from him, he's like, everybody can't stop reading the story out loud in the office. And I was like, oh man, I did know one thing. I knew that was a good sign when that happened. And, they loved that. And then, as always happens in comics, you always get a job because someone else falls off the face of the earth or drops out or something or gets poisoned. And this other writer who was supposed to be writing, he had just started their Marvel Adventures Fantastic Four book. He just ran off in the woods or something because no one heard from him, and he wouldn't get back in touch with anybody, and it was like right in the middle of issue 2. And they said, could you finish this book? Okay, and it was Annihilus. And I was like, all right, I guess I see where he was going here. I'll just rewrite some of the dialogue at the beginning and then finish the book from there the way I would have rather done it. It was perfect, too, because I got this little half-hearted script that gets to about page 5 and then says, I'd like to give the artist some room to be creative. I feel like, so have him fight for about 7 pages. And then that was the last thing you ever heard from the guy. He was out of ideas by page 5, and that was it. And so, I jumped right in there. And I was working with somebody who I would end up working with a lot at Marvel, Carlo Pagulayan, who lives in the Philippines, as a monster artist. And, and of course he killed on it. And then we just kept doing the book. They just told me, well, you can just write the whole first year. And I was like, yeah. And then it just kind of kept coming from there. But you never know. The thing I try to get across to people is you never know what book is going to be your break or your kind of breakthrough book. So you should just swing for the fence on all of them. Really, don't take any for granted, and really just try to entertain yourself is the biggest thing. That to me, every time I really try to entertain myself, that's the one I always hear readers coming back responding well to, because apparently we have stuff in common.
Yeah. Yeah.
Don't try to second guess what they want. It's just a chumps game doing that.
Very cool. Very cool. So all the way in the beginning, you started with solitaire, and that was Malibu.
Yeah.
Yeah. How'd you like Malibu?
I thought it was great because I was like fresh out of college and trying to get work, and I had joined the studio called Artemis, which with the late great Mike Wieringo, Richard Case, who was working on Doom Patrol then, and Chuck Wojtkiewicz and all these guys, and I was just the little peon or whatever, didn't really have any regular work. I was just getting a little backup here and there, but I would take advantage of. I would just do a lot of sample pages, and as everyone would send in their pages, like Mike would go to send in whatever his pages were for the week, and I'd put mine in there, so they had to look at it like, well, what are these copies of something in here, and then they would read that. And it was great because I landed one under Hank Canals at Malibu's nose, and it was some samples of the Fantastic Four of all things, and he liked that and said, hey, you could draw Solitaire, which is nothing like Fantastic Four, but he liked those pages, and it kind of pays to do characters that they've seen before, and then I started getting regular work, and I was like, this is great, man, I've got it made as an artist. And then that's when the comics industry just completely bottomed out. Well, actually, Malibu went first because Marvel bought them and just put them out of business.
Now, this was what, 94, so 19
Yeah,
years ago.
94, 95.
Yeah.
And so Marvel just like, hey, we can just we can improve our market share by buying this company and shutting it down. They were pretty evil back then. That was the Perlman days. And so Marvel owed me all that work. And is the way I felt about it. And I just bounced around, like I was doing a delivery job and stuff like that for a long time, and doing little odd comics here and there. And a lot of those DC big book of stories, like they were the big book of martyrs or big book of crime and stuff like that, which were great coffee table books. And I liked doing them. There were cool things that you had to do a lot of research for and get stuff historically accurate, but it wasn't enough to make a living on, really.
So right around the same time was the
90s were not that successful for me.
And they weren't that successful for anybody.
Yeah.
Oh, well, that's not true, because we bought 20, 30 copies of everything that we thought that was going to be worth money.
Yeah, well, if you were at Image, it was a pretty good time.
Yeah. Around the same time, he did the calculus test. So this is through Caliber Comics.
I just inked my friend Casey Jones on that.
That was it. Now, you just wanted to jump in there. You helped him ink it out.
Oh yeah, because he was in that studio too, and we would just always like bail each other out or something. Casey was just like, I think told him that he would do this story, and then ran out of time, and then I just ran over there and inked him. Yeah, it's kind of funny. You really are looking at that Wikipedia page.
And why not?
That would not come out anywhere else.
Yeah.
Will somebody please go update my Wikipedia page? It's really behind.
I'll do this afterwards.
It doesn't even mention Aquaman. So.
Yeah. No, well, no. Yeah. I didn't know you would know. Hey, I was been looking you up for the last 2 weeks, and I had no idea.
Yeah.
Yeah, I had no idea about the Aquaman thing. It didn't pop up on anything.
You ain't on the Twitter. That's your problem.
That's true. Yeah.
Yeah. That's where all the news is.
Yeah.
And I'm Jeff Parker on Twitter.
So do you like working with all your friends? You just want to pull them all in and let them pull you in and have a good time and team up and do as many things as possible?
Yeah. But I won't just indiscriminately pull in somebody because they're my friend. It's like they've got to fit the book that's working on, or it just won't, or it'll be a bad experience for them and me. If it's not the right sort of thing.
mean,
And
you
then
work
also, I can't necessarily just get somebody on a book. Editors are often only in a mood once in a while to kind of take your suggestion. They've got to be in just the right. They had just the right amount of coffee and sugar, and just caught you on the phone when you were raving about somebody, and then saw it. It's like, and I guess I'm the same way. But so you can't always help people out. But sometimes you'll find somebody who's like, I know this person's perfect for this job, and they make deadlines. Please look at them.
Do you have any favorites? Even if they're not generally your friends, even if it was somebody that just brought you in.
Well, I'd really like to work when I worked recently on the Adventures of Superman with Chris Somney, and I'd really like to work with him some more. And he and I both want to do more Superman stuff. So we made it clear to them that if they want to do a graphic novel or something, we'd be up for that. And so it's just, he and I just we love Toth and a lot of the same things. So it kind of clicks really well.
And who are you working with on Batman?
Jonathan Case.
All right. And how much have you guys done together?
Well, nothing before that.
That's it.
Yeah. And that was.
And you're crushing it.
He just came out swinging, and has essentially set the look for the book. It's kind of been the Jonathan show. No matter who's working on it, they've had to look at the way Jonathan colored himself or the way he presented in that DC squared format things, and everybody's had to kind of pay attention to him, that's the glory of going first, and of just knocking it out of the park so hard. And that whole project is just purely me entertaining myself and the artist. It's like, boy, I can just be as indulgent. I can have Batman smile, all these things you can't normally have.
Very cool, very cool. So when let's go through like a typical day at the office. You walk in, and what is your main goal? What are you looking for? Whether it's a new project or an ongoing project, something you want to do that is just in you. Like, how do you go about this?
Well, I usually roll in around 12, so my first thing is lunch. And we got those food carts outside, so that's often one of the big.
You truly are an Oregonian now.
Stops, yeah. I go to the food carts if I didn't bring something down on my bicycle to eat. And to get the whole cliche thing.
Yeah.
Perhaps they'll have salmon in the food carts, and then and then I kill some time talking to running around, go see what Dustin Weaver's drawing, and then make my way around. What's Ben Dewey doing on his tragedy series and all this stuff? Go see what Steve Lieber's drawing on Superior Foes of Spider-Man, and then I finally I've kept enough people from work. Now I need to sit down and do. But I always start off, and I really do, and I know it's a huge cliche to work in a coffee shop, but I do start off in the morning writing for a couple hours in a coffee shop.
It's not if you're published.
Yeah, it's not I'm not really writing a fake screenplay you're never going to see.
That's exactly right.
And just sitting there looking pensive. I go there, I get my coffee, which has to be Stumptown, and then I work, and after a couple hours, I kind of get stalled out. I'm like stuck on a scene, and then I get on my bike and ride downtown, and doing something else for a little bit, literally the gears start turning. I start getting ideas, and by the time I get there, magically I've got more scene in my head to work from, and I can get going again. And it always works like that. Knock on soft furniture. It's
there's wood in there somewhere.
Yeah, there probably is some sort of wood right here, and. But yeah, and then once I'm down there, obviously seeing everybody working on different things, I get so many ideas. I just don't understand now anymore how people can work in their basement or whatever at home all by themselves with no input. I don't think it's really that good for you. I feel like you're just going to eventually be in an echo chamber, Or some people will get like one other artist to work with them, and still it's like you're just going to play movies in the background or whatever. I don't know. I like the studio atmosphere, and I think whenever people can get one going, they should, because it's really good for you it helps you treat everything like a real job. You think, well, no, I need to get this many pages done today, and that's what needs to happen. I can't, otherwise this book is not going to ship.
Is that your favorite part, that you get to go wherever you want to go? You get to do what you want to do, and I know you have deadlines, but you still kind of work on your own schedule. If you did want to write at nighttime, or if
and I do. I often wake up in the middle of the night for no reason, and I think, and if I can't get back to sleep, I just start working. And why not? It's like I'm just sitting there in bed with a cat on me. which is probably also the other way a lot of people work, just laying in bed with a cat on them. It's not a bad way to be.
No, it's not terrible at all. It sounds like a
And
pretty
then
good life to
until
me.
I get sleepy and pass out with my computer.
Now, as time has gone on since you started, and have you seen any trends or anything that you've wanted to jump on, or anything that has been happening recently, especially in the comic books, or not just recently, just as you've seen it going on, that have like really inspired you, or anything that you wanted to really hit on?
Oh gosh, I feel like now it's just finally the main trend I've noticed is that comics seem to have become more ecumenical in recent years, where suddenly it was like the field was very divided for several years, and it's like, here's mainstream, and it all looks like Adam Hughes or whatever, and here's autobio comics where people just talk about their drinking problems, and it all has to look like this guy, and that sort of thing, and it's like, and that was not a fun period. I was like, I like a lot of these things, and yet they're all in different camps and stuff. And then suddenly, all at once, it seems like it's proliferated. And you see, like, there are fun books again. And for some reason, all of a sudden, like, I can do a Batman book where we're cracking jokes and stuff, and it's okay. And I don't know why it's now okay, but it wasn't 5 years ago. And now you can have all these cool styles, and and I can have Colleen Coover working with me on something, and before it had to look like some Neil Adams derivative thing, but it's probably just a cycle thing where everybody finally just got fed up with that, and all at once, a few people reached across the divides, and then suddenly, now you just see, like at Marvel, you see a lot of different styles. I'm trying to think of a good example. Well, like Scotty Young on a book, you see something like him. He would never have gotten work at Marvel in the 90s, and now he's like one of their most sought-after artists. He does these variants that everybody kills to get. It's just really cool. And I feel like finally the comics industry is where I wanted it to be, like about 20 years ago, when it was just getting really, again, I didn't do well in the 90s, and it was just like, it was a very dark period, and there were some good things. There were a few standout books here and there, like Hellboy started then, and stuff that I still love.
Well, the readers have spread out so vastly since then. I mean, you have people from, infants getting into it, having their parents get into it, and having, basically stack everything from their walls to their cribs with comic stuff, all the way to the guys in their 70s and 80s reminiscing about, action comics and detective comics and everything else. For you, what were the comics you started reading?
The first things I read, I think, were Dennis the Menace. There was this kid named Dennis. I don't know.
Everybody know about Dennis the Menace, right?
And he would run around and shoot things with a slingshot and run through his neighbor's yard.
Mr. Wilson.
I don't know what you guys know. I was just like, maybe I should tell you. So I liked that a lot. I read the Harvey comics as a kid, which is another, to praise Dark Horse, they've been reprinting those volumes, which my kids have completely devoured. So it's like Hot Stuff and Richie Rich and Casper and all this stuff that's aimed at little kids, which, is a market that everybody's just now getting back into, finally. Because it still felt like for years everybody was like, yeah, we want to make stuff for kids, and stab. It's just all stuff like that. And then finally you get some people who actually seem interested in making kid stuff. I guess that maybe those people had children. I don't know. So I read like a lot of that. And again, like I said, my dad had a grocery store, so everything that was there I was going to read. I would read like Superman and Batman. There weren't actually a lot of Marvels, because whoever his distributor was in that part of North Carolina mainly carried DC Comics. There would be like the big ones like Spider-Man. But the other stuff, like, I didn't get to see a lot of Thor or anything until later. And I had to go, for some reason, I had to go into 7-Eleven to read Marvel comics. And I was like, and so when we'd go on a trip, and if we'd stop at one, I'd go, cool, I can get, Thor. I would get all excited. It's like, I don't know why I can't get this normally. And I have to be at the store with the Slurpees, but I've got to, that's where it is. And I would read stuff like even the Warren magazines of the 70s would put stuff like The Spirit and all this stuff, and Vampirella. And I would read that, and I'd always kind of look around because I wasn't sure if I was supposed to be reading it. And I was like, no one's stopping me. No one's taking it out of my hand. I guess it's okay. And I'd keep looking back. It still kind of looks like overage stuff. But then again, I was getting to read a lot of really great artists that way. So I jumped all over the place, and I never had like some thing of like these are baby books or these are not superheroes or anything. I never related to that, and it helps me now. Like if I get any kind of job, it's like okay, I've usually got if it's a mystery, that's cool. I like mystery story. If it's a Western, I can come up with a Western pretty soon because it's just I like all the stuff. There's not a whole lot of genres I don't enjoy.
So comics were comics. You just love them all.
Yeah, it's just stories. It's just another way to tell any form of story you would want. I'm glad that like now there's more sci-fi, and I mean we seem to have a bit more zombie comics than we really need.
One or two.
Yeah, but that's fine. We for the longest time we had too many superhero comics, so it's only fair.
So we talked about what got you into it and all that. Now, is there anything
what's going to get me out of it? That's what
No, but is there anything that you want to work on that you haven't gotten in on or nobody wants to give to you? Is there anything that really you want to, you want to jump on? You want to that maybe you're not used to or something you haven't done before?
I would like to. Well, I am so I am working on more original material, creator-owned stuff. Oni Press is publishing a book that artist Sandy Jarrell and I are doing that I'm not going to tell you the name of yet because they would like to tell that. But the nice thing is Sandy's done some Batman 66, so people will know who he is when this comes out. And there's some other original material, things like that I'm working up. And I would really like to be able to make a living off my own stuff because, I mean, it's really cool being able to work on characters I grew up with and everything. But ultimately, I didn't get into it to not create my own stuff. And I would like to also work on some bande dessinée with like some European artists. I like that format a lot. It's a little wider, a little more room.
A little different.
Yeah, and the European readers are nice people, and I'd like to do some books for them too.
That's very cool.
And get obviously I want to get brought out to France and Italy and go to some shows.
Yeah, absolutely.
They get you drunk at those shows.
Hang out at the Mediterranean, somewhere in the Mediterranean, and just enjoy some good wine.
It just seems like it would go together to me.
Yeah, absolutely. Now I hate to jump back to Batman 66, but you knew it was going to happen. This whole panel, yeah. Did you get to do any research? Other than just sit there and watch the movie and the TV series, did you get to go talk to Adam West or Burt Ward or anybody?
No, because he's always on this tight signing schedule.
Yeah.
And it charges a lot now. It's like no more of that $10 of me at the car show.
No.
It's like a lot.
Yeah, Adam signed my chest for $50. Him and Burt Ward, and got it tattooed over. Yeah, I'm terrible.
So it's covered?
Yeah, it's right here.
Okay.
Yeah, $50 a pop.
Wow.
A piece. So yeah, he's always running around, and he is on that Wizard World kind of
the circuit. Yeah, it's like here's him. Sometimes Julie Newmar.
That's exactly right.
All those people.
So you didn't get to go check him out and talk to him at all? Have you talked to him before, other than at that signing?
No, I was kind of afraid. I was like, what if I catch him on a bad day? And it's like now I'm working on this book all the time with imagining his voice and everything. I don't want to catch him like a little low sugar moment or something,
and just kind of tick him off, and then he's got to think
exactly, and then like
you writing
or like maybe he picks it up one day and sees an artist draw him some way he didn't like, and then I catch it. No way, it's not worth it. He's a totally nice guy, and we don't need to be pals. Wait, I was going to say something there. What was, darn it, what was this? You said something before it came up to about Adam West. No, I can't think of what it was. I'm kind of shot here at the end of the day. Sorry.
It's been a long day.
Well, I'm not used to a big show like this in Portland. This is really strange for me. And I assume all of you, I feel like if I walk outside, it's going to be San Francisco or Seattle or something, and I don't know what's happening. I mean, good. We deserved a show like this, and they've done a great job putting this together.
It's a blast, absolutely. So you have been enjoying yourself here, and you're happy to see this. That was actually going to be a question of mine. You're really pumped about
Well,
this.
you get sick of years and years of people saying, "How come Portland doesn't have a?" You know, that's all you ever hear is like, "How come 90% of the comics industry is here and we don't?"
Yeah.
We don't have a big show that kind of goes along with it. Well, now we do.
I've only lived here for a year, and I've been to 5 conventions just in 1 year. I love it. Nothing.
Where'd you move from?
Philadelphia, southern New Jersey, Philadelphia area.
Ah, okay.
We don't need to talk about that though.
They got some good comic shops around there, though.
They do, killer comic shops, and that's another thing. So where do you go for comics in the city, and what kind of issues do you pick up nowadays?
Oh gosh.
Or are they just sending them to you?
I bumble around till I just see something I like, or I'll get something, because I've got some clout now. I can just kind of guilt people into giving me comics. So I don't.
He's an email away from a
just
free
make
stack.
a little face at someone's table and they give me these comics and, oh, thanks a lot, man. And then I'll walk away. I didn't pay. And but around town, like a lot of times, like I live closest to Cosmic Monkey, so I go there most of the time. I like Bridge City a lot. I go do signings there. They throw a really cool Batman party for me and Jonathan and Mike Allred. And I ran over to Excalibur. I go to Tifa all the time. It's they're all great shops. I mean, I've never lived in a place that had this many good comic shops. And it's just completely by whatever neighborhood you're in, you're going to have a really good one somewhere near you. And for me, I can just walk over to Cosmic Monkey in a few minutes, and then my son will usually plop down over there in their kids section, and then we end up walking out of there with another volume of Bone or Avatar: The Last Airbender or something like that.
Which is
and Korra.
Which is amazing.
Yeah.
But have you ever thought about doing some more kid stuff? I mean, for your kids, or just to get into that and maybe give him something that he could read that's yours.
Yes. I want to do some stuff that that can be evergreen material that you can hand to any kid at any year and stuff like that. So I am going to try to do more of that. And the Oni project that I mentioned is not little kids, but it's YA, right? It's YA. Charlie's my editor. And
is that your Oni liaison out there?
he's my editor.
Yeah. Oh.
So making sure
he doesn't spoil anything.
And I tell you what I'm never going to do.
That's going to be the rest of my questions now.
Yeah. No, and it's so cool to be able to do something like go over into their office or whatever when they're running around with their heads cut off trying to get these books out and everything. But it's here in Portland. It's not, you don't have to go to New York, and you can go see everybody working on everything, and go down to Dark Horse and check on stuff. And same thing, they're racing around
you
trying
can.
to. Yeah, I can, and they'll give me free comics.
Yeah. Well, that's awesome. So let's get back to, I hate to say this, but like some cliche questions. So for suggestions, if anybody wanted to get into it, if you had any, insight onto it, what to do, how to get into it, and what was your personal experience like? Was it, I understand it was difficult.
Oh, yeah, it would, the only way really now, I think, is to do webcomics. I think you've got to establish a web presence. I think that's the only way people consider you real nowadays, which is so funny because it used to be the thing that wasn't real. And now it's like, look, they get spread around on the internet, they go viral all the time, blah, 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 this looks really good. And they also editors can see that you make deadlines. And you're making your own deadlines, and clearly no one's paying you for these things most of the time. Even though every web cartoonist I know tries to pretend they make money, they don't. They just do it because they love it. But that's kind of the entertainment industry. You tend to fake it until you make it, just like they say. It's a horrible cliche, but it's really true. But also, there's no cheaper way to make comics than to simply put them up on a website, which costs you $5 a month, and gives you a nice steady deadline. Like, I got to get this page up every week. I mean, it's before what I always had to use was like going to comic shows. And I would before the New York Comic Con, I'm going to have a new 10 pages that I'll do in my spare time, and so I can show them around. And in fact, back then, the artists would remember. They like, okay, don't show us those old pages. I'd go around and show people like Bo Hampton, a friend of mine, who I ended up doing assistant work for, and that's the other thing, like if you can get assistant work for somebody, the most typical way to get it now is to learn how to do color flats, because there are always tons of pages needing to be colored, and the way that works is generally the colorist doesn't spend all their time with it. They have someone else flat out all the shapes, and then they go through and then they start making all the fine choices of which colors really balance together and what modeling it will have on it, things like that. And you get paid a horrible, insulting rate to do it, but you get to know people, and that's kind of the comics way. You always start off working for free or cheap, and then you gradually kind of keep trading up if you're doing it right until you can make a living off of it.
So before we get into any questions, I don't know if people have questions or anything like that, but do you have any? Does anybody have any questions? All right, so
I'd like to hear some questions.
Yeah. So before that, though, do we have any like words of wisdom, anything of that nature? Maybe a funny story that pops into your head at the moment? He's gonna say no.
Well, I am going to say no, but I'm going to do it in an interesting way. Like, again, I want to go back to that part where I said you never know what's going to be your break, but you also never know what's going to really screw you. It's like had somebody doing a horrible coloring job not too long ago, and really put us in a bind or whatever. And man, I was in such a foul mood. I was like, I'm never working with that person, and I'm never going to recommend that person. And I was just thinking of that the other day. It's like you don't take on something that you really don't have time for, or that you're not going to be into, because it's not going to do you any favors. I'm sorry to bring a downer moment into the panel like that, but if you don't let somebody pressure you into a job. If you don't feel into it, just flat out say, look, I wouldn't be able to do this justice. No one will get mad at that. Everybody will go, thank you for saying that to us. They might be disappointed, but they will not hold it against you, and they won't badmouth you. But if you do turn in a crappy job at the last minute when no one can do anything about it, and we all know you phoned it in, well, then you're sentenced to hell forever, or at least until everybody forgets.
That's it. Yeah. Shouldn't even be doing it at that point. You should love your job. Always want to do it. Never phone it in.
You can't love everything, but you can. But you can also, you have choices, and you can keep yourself from doing stuff that you're not going to do a great job on. At the same time, I also encourage everybody, be extremely supportive of all the people you're creating with. It's like a lot of times you're doing these jobs and they don't pay much money, but you can take time and really compliment the things you liked about a page or a scene or something like that, and you'd be surprised how far that goes. So, if you're working with somebody, well, make sure to just really slap them on the back hard, because it doesn't cost you anything, and it completely makes the difference.
Well, you had some words of wisdom.
That was fairly wise.
It was absolutely, I would say, passed fairly.
Yeah.
So yeah, let's get to some questions.
Also, marry somebody with a regular job. That always comes up.
Steady income. Yeah. What do we have here?
Oh, thank you. I'm so proud of that. No, you did it just right. Well, it's Tom Fowler. He's a badass. Oh, yeah, I knew Tom for years, and Tom's one of those people. I always felt like he got so good because he couldn't get regular work. And there's a certain thing where you have to become more versatile if people won't put you on a nice regular job where you do so you have to bounce around and keep learning new skills. And he would do that. And he was a serious art student in his youth, and he just kept working at his painting, all this other stuff. And then he started getting good paying work at Mad Magazine, which was great because he deserved that. And then when Ben Abernathy at Wildstorm asked me to pitch something, and I said, "Can I do something supernatural?" And when they liked my pitch, we said, "Okay, let's start looking for artists." And I suggested Tom. That fell into at just the right time. He had a baby on the way and everything. He really could have used a job right then. And as luck had it, it was a job he was really into, because the whole thing is kind of like this big love letter to Douglas Adams' work. And he and I are both into Adams' novels. And, you know, because it's kind of like a magical Doctor who's a jerk. A little bit. You know, he's got a companion type figure and things like that. So, yeah, no one could have drawn that the way Tom did. And, you know, he painted the covers. And then Wildstorm, you know, the office loved the book, but they were essentially being closed down by DC. And they just kind of on the way out decided to just do a really nice job with the trade of it. So they said, if you want to do extra stuff. So I wrote this little prose story. He did extra illustrations. He did prints and all these things that we jammed in there. And that's why that one volume is so nice, you know. Whereas the individual issues were kind of annoying because they kept slapping ads for other books that also weren't selling on the cover. And it's like, who wants to read about this stupid book on my book? This was really annoying. But, you know, he and I had the best time on that, you know. And we're hoping to eventually be able to do more of those stories. Yes, thank you for doing that. Aquaman? Well, you know, he breathes water. Oh, God, yeah, it's Aquaman. That's dumb. How familiar were you with Aquaman? He's Aquaman. Doesn't everybody just know who he is and what his deal is? Well, obviously, I was more familiar with, like, as a kid reading the ones Jim Aparo would do and Steve Skeets and all that stuff. And then later when I was able to get the reprints, I really loved like the Nick Cardy and Ramona Fradon stuff. He always had, for some reason, better art in his book. Like, he had just really beautiful stuff. But no, I loved it. I took scuba diving in college. I love ocean science and stuff. And then one of the really cool things is, like, since that was announced, like, I've had all these oceanologists, you know, follow me and then offer their services. Like, if you need any advice or how things work, blah, 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 we'll be happy to chime in. And then yesterday, some guy invited, and by the way, if you get to Miami, we'll take you out on this shark watching thing with us sometime. I was like, yeah, finally. It's like, this never happened on the other books. How come I get on Aquaman, suddenly I get cool ocean voyages offered? But yeah, no, I always knew his story. But I mean, again, to go back and rag on the 90s like we've been doing, which seems to be the thing of this hour, you know, Aquaman did not get a fair shake in the 90s. I mean, he gets a hook hand and then a water hand. It's just, I just hated it. And, you know, I liked the stories my friend Carl Kiesel wrote. But you know, I feel like the mistake that always ends up getting made with him, and same thing with Submariner, Namor, they always end up like kind of going the fantasy route and keeping him underwater too much. And it's like, here's these intrigues in Atlantis, and then everybody falls asleep. No one cares about Atlanteans because they don't have any opinion about Atlanteans, and they should. But I think that's the way you got to bring that in, is to have it, as I said, I'm going to kind of keep it 2/3 above water and then 1/3 down there or whatever, because yes, he is supposed to be the king of the sea, but I think ultimately people want him to be a superhero more than the adventures of a king. He's an Atlantean American, and I respect that. But yeah, I'm very excited about the book. Fingers crossed. So far, they seem to be really into the ideas. I've been bouncing off of them. I just have to make it sync up with what Jeff's been doing, so it doesn't feel like it just suddenly switched to a different book. But it should be fine. I really like the handle they have on Mira. That's Aquaman's maybe wife. You heard recently they made a thing about like, well, okay, if no one's married in DC, is like, what about Aquaman and Mira, and how come they consider her the Queen of Atlantis? And so I'm going to actually answer that in the book. But really? I'm not going to tell you what I'm going to do. You just have to read it.
Does anybody have another one for him?
Any more aquatic questions?
Oh, that's good.
Also, I don't think I mentioned, though, I briefly mentioned the King's Watch thing. I don't know if anybody's been reading that. I don't know if you like Flash Gordon or the Phantom or Mandrake, if you know who Mandrake is. He's a guy who wears a top hat, which is good enough to have a comic book. You know, and he can do card tricks. So that's what they do, and they fight monsters. That's coming out right now, and that just started like a week ago. Oh, yeah.
Really quickly, how did that come together? 'Cause that's a little bit of an odd combination.
I don't know either. I was just suddenly doing it, it seemed like. But why do you think it seemed like an odd combination? Because they're all King Features characters.
Yeah, but I would never have thought of trying to work the Phantom into a story with Flash Gordon. Like, that just seems
But there's a cartoon called Defenders of the Earth from the 80s where they were all together, and Lothar, Mandrake's assistant, and they would all just fight weird things.
It was never very good.
It was not a great cartoon, but it was a cartoon. And yeah, I think that as it was put to me was that King Features, Dynamite got whatever the rights to do all those characters, and they wanted to do something that was kind of an event amongst itself, and they said, could you come up with a story that the three would be in? And I went, oh, okay. And I thought about it. It's like, yeah, it doesn't seem very hard to me. In fact, and they asked if it could be in the modern day, and I was fine with that. I could have made it a period story, but I didn't think it necessarily needed to be one. And as you'll see, I don't really change a whole lot really about what any of them used to be. I think everybody thinks it's some weird updating or something, but everything happens with Flash Gordon kind of the way it originally happened. I'm a big fan of all that stuff, like Alex Raymond stories and art, and I used to read the Phantom in the newspaper because it was one of those things like Ziggy that was just always there, so I would read it. So The Ghost Who Walks. Every single one has a caption explaining that Walker means the ghost who walks. So I've got to, at some point, also sneak that caption in, even though I have no other captions like that anywhere else in the book, just because it'll be funny.
You could hide it in there. Did you talk to Sam Jones about that or anything?
No, I didn't.
Not that
I
you'd
forgot
want to.
that he was here. Well, we've already established I won't go talk to actors. Yeah, I love that movie, though. Even though this has got nothing to do with the movie, their previous take on Flash Gordon was more like the movie. But I am a big fan of that movie. It's so fun and weird, and it's got so much cool Queen music in it.
Yeah. Now we actually only have a minute and a half left.
Oh, wow.
But you are writing for Batman, even though it's the 66, and it is a Adam West.
The real
thing.
one. Yeah.
And there's only like 20 people in here, so I have to ask.
Okay.
What do you think about Ben Affleck?
I don't have a problem with Ben Affleck. Here's my thing. It doesn't really take a huge range to play Batman. I'm sorry.
No.
Pretty much once you put that mask on, you're Batman. I mean, I remember the big trouble everybody had with Michael Keaton being Batman, and then they were all fine with that. So it's like, okay, if you thought Mr. Mom could be Batman, why are... Yeah, what's that? Ben, he's tall, he's got a big chin. What do you want? I mean, as long as he just doesn't do his weird little smile that I don't like, But I mean, I think the guy can be good, and if it's directed well, I think it'll totally be fine. But then again, I also didn't mind Superman killing people.
Neither did I. And I'm giving Ben Affleck the benefit of the doubt. And I just want to thank you for.
They all laugh. They're all going to go see it.
Yeah. Oh, well, it'll make plenty of money.
Yeah,
No one's arguing
exactly.
about that.
Yeah.
We do. I'm sure everybody here, including myself, want to thank you for coming out. And we know
Thanks.
it's been a long
weird
day.
time. I really appreciate you coming out.
Random time. And it's been a pleasure, to say the least. And hopefully everyone will see him roaming around. Go talk to him.
I'm at table 911.
He's at table 911.
Yeah. Never forget my table.
That's exactly right. And thank you guys all for coming out and everything.
They did that to me on purpose.
He went there. Thank you so much.
So
have a great day.
All right, thanks.
You guys enjoy the rest of your costume contest tonight at 8 o'clock.